Welcome to All In with Allie podcast, the podcast for online business owners and entrepreneurs that are ready to create the life and business of their dreams. I'm so happy you are here. Today, we are going to break down what I consider 6 money blockers that you're probably overlooking, and you're probably overlooking them because they're really sneaky. They're things, some of them are things that we all do from time to time, no doubt. And in some cases, you might be doing these all the time. This might be the first time that you hear some of these things as it relates to blocking the flow of money. And that's what I mean whenever I say money blocker. I mean, when we think of money flowing into our world consistently, your business is always going to ebb and flow. There's going to be periods of peaks where, hopefully you're making so much money you don't even know what to do with it all. And then there's going to be other times you're like, okay, wait, what's going on? And that especially as entrepreneurs is normal. Like business owners, we know, there's going to be an up and down, of course. But then there are also times that we can make those ebbs a lot worse with some of these things that I'm going to talk about here. I put 6 because these are the 6 that came first to mind. These are 6 that a lot of these I work on consistently with myself and with clients. These are really big ones, but also that I left a lot of the super obvious ones out. The ones that are like, well, yeah, duh. I'll think of an example in a minute, I'm sure. But I wanted to think of some that you're probably overlooking. I want this to be something they're like, holy crap, I never thought of it from that perspective. I want this to be an episode so that when you listen to it and if you notice that you're doing a couple of these, or in some cases, all of these, you can start working to stop doing these things and rectify it. And my intention is to hopefully make it to where you notice a very quick turnaround with your money flow. That's my intention for this episode. So money blocking is just, you notice like, okay, wait, what's going on here? Like before, you can think back a couple of months ago and money was flowing beautifully and consistently. And, maybe there were people consistently in your DMs or inquiring about your business. And then now, or you can think it back on any time, but, contrast to feeling like there's a block. Like there was a flow and now there's something in the way, stopping the flow. These things are absolute money blockers. Okay. So let's get into them. And obviously this isn't an exhaustive list, but again, these are some of the biggies that I also think are pretty sneaky. So the first thing when I think about this, and I experience this a lot as somebody who I sell a lot on social media. Thus, I receive a lot of inquiries and DMs related to the things that I sell. And I experience this a lot. Not so much anymore. And I know the reason why is because this thing I used to do until I realized what I was doing. And this thing is inquiring about offers or something that you intend or maybe even don't intend on buying, but inquiring about something and then ghosting. Have you ever done that? We all have. We probably all have. I used to do this quite a bit. I won't say a lot, but quite a bit. And so this is what this would look like. I would see, let's say I'm following somebody and they put out information about like a new mastermind or something. And I'm like, ooh, I want to know like how much is it, what's included, and I would have genuine interest. And you have people out there too that do this just because they're nosy and they want to know, which whatever. But I would be genuinely interested, and then I would receive the details about whatever offer it was that I was inquiring about. And for some reason, it just wasn't a good fit. Maybe the time frame or the amount of support, or in a lot of cases, the investment was just out of my reach for that period of time. And what I would do and how I would justify ghosting this person, and not in like a mean way, I just would, maybe like double tap on it and float on with life, and typically forget. Like I wasn't, in a lot of cases, we aren't doing this on purpose, but I would just be like, okay, in my mind, I'd be like, okay, this isn't a good fit. Maybe next time, or this is something to work toward. But I wouldn't say that to the person. Either I would forget, like I would just have this inner dialogue with myself and I would forget and go on with life. Or I would assume, maybe this person has like a really big audience. So I would just assume like she probably doesn't want to be bothered with my excuses or, my thoughts unless I'm in. So I just don't want to be a bother. And, figure that she probably doesn't notice anyway, maybe in some cases, and move on. Or I'm trying to think of maybe another reason why I might have ghosted. Those are really the big ones. I either, again, have an internal dialogue and forget, or I just assume, or like I maybe another reason is like, and I've totally felt this way, I'm a little embarrassed. Maybe I've inquired multiple times about something to this particular creator and it's still not a good fit, and part of me like feels a little embarrassed, like, I have to tell this person no again, and I judge myself over that, and I project that personal judgment onto this person, thinking that they're probably going to think the same thing. Thus I ghost and I disappear and pretend like I didn't ask. And anyway, I used to, I used to do this myself, and I used to experience this a lot. And the reason why, knowing what I know now, I realized the reason why I was experiencing this so much on my end is because I was doing this. And this is how this is a money blocker for you, or a sales blocker. You get what you give. The energy that you put out into the world, you're going to get back. So if you are somebody who, even with, the best of intentions, you're constantly, it doesn't even have to be constantly, but you're inquiring about things, right? You're essentially like walking into somebody's store saying, hey, I'm interested in this, and letting them know that there's an interest there, and they give the details, and then you're never to be seen again. If you put that energy out, you will get this back in some way in your life. If you don't have a business, you're going to, maybe experience this with friends, or, whatever your job is, you'll experience some form of this for sure. But this is a big one. I think the most insidious of these is, and the most annoying, is when, let's say, like the person follows up with you, right? Like I'll do this sometimes. I'll put out an offer, and usually if it's a higher ticket offer, like a micromind or mastermind or something like this, and I reach out, or the person reaches out to me, I always I don't reach out to people first. People always will, like I put out the offer and then I'll let people express their interest, and then we'll open the dialogue from there. So I put out something higher ticket, I get X amount of responses. And then every once in a while, depending on what the thing is, I will follow up with you. Like if you've said, oh, cool, okay, I'm going to think about it. Or maybe you read it, but maybe like it's the day of the cart closing or a price increase or whatever. If I have the time and the space and it feels aligned, to reach out and just be like, hey, following up with you, did you have any questions about this? Today's the last day, or the price is increasing, so I just wanted to follow up. The people that see that and then don't respond, this is like a double red flag. Okay. It takes nothing to be decent and say, hey, just like closing the loop. Hey, thanks for the info. It's not a good time right now. Thanks for the info. I haven't had time to make a decision. Thanks for the info. Or no thanks for the info. Just like some sort of response, closing the loop for that business owner so that they know, is this something worth putting energy into, or can I close the book on this, at least for now? If you are not doing that, if you're not, and guys, I realize sometimes you just forget, right? Or like it's a genuine mistake. These things happen. We get that. It's the intention behind it. It's it's the lack of decency isn't the word, but it's not very polite, right? It's not very considerate. So again, this is a money blocker that you might be overlooking because it seems harmless, especially if you're inquiring with a bigger business and you just assume that the person doesn't notice. But in a lot of cases, even if they have their team looking into it, they are noticing, and it's just not the energy that you want to put out, especially if you are a business that also looks for this type of interaction with your audience. Like you put out your own offers and you're looking for people to inquire and come back with either a yes or no. If you aren't closing the loop, if you are consistently ghosting, then you better believe you're going to get that back in return. So I think if you're starting to notice a lot of that, the first thing I would look at is like, are you doing this yourself in some way, in some area of life? It doesn't have to be like this exact example, Another caveat to this, or example of this, would be consistently inquiring about things online and then not moving, not because of a good reason, but consistently out of fear, right? You get that internal hit about offers. And we've all experienced that, where you see somebody that you're following for quite some time that you really resonate with. They put out something that seems really exciting, something that seems like a perfect fit for what you're looking for. You get that flutter, you get that initial excitement, like, oh, this would be perfect. This would be so amazing. I want the details. And you get the details. You're like, oh my gosh, this seems so cool. But you constantly override that intuition, right? That excitement with negativity, with scarcity, with fear, right? There's always a reason why it's not a good fit. Now, what I'm not saying here is that there's genuine good reasons why this isn't a good fit for you, right? Inquire all day long, reach out and ask about 10 offers a day if you want to. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. So close the loop and move on. But if it's, what I'm talking about, when your heart is like singing, it's like begging you to move on something. Deep down it's time, but you allow your mind to constantly drudge up the worst case scenario, the dreaded what ifs that will always talk you out of a good move, especially if it's something new, especially if it's something that requires some sort of investment or whatever. There's always going to be reasons to not move. And sometimes those reasons are valid. Sometimes they're simply purely out of scarcity. Okay. So I would add that in too. If you're a constant inquirer, but you very rarely allow yourself to move because of fear, you're going to get a lot of this too. You're going to experience this. So these things are absolute money blockers that are very easy to miss. Number 2 on the list, and these are in no particular order, but this is the second thing: selling things just for the money, or selling things that you haven't quite embodied yet. Here's what these things mean. as business owners, our job is to make money, right? And it's really easy in certain seasons to fall into the trap of like, okay, what's going to make the money the easiest? What's something I've done in the past that's worked that I can pull out of the toolbox? Now, sometimes this is fine. It's purely, all of these things are purely what the energy is behind them. Okay. So if let's go back to the first example. Let's say you asked about one of my offers and you genuinely forgot to follow up with me. The intention of that is pure. It was a genuine accident, right? Like it wasn't this malicious thing. And rarely is it malicious. But like if you saw it and you're like, I'm not going to respond because I don't have the time or whatever, she doesn't care or whatever. That's where the intention gets a little, But if it's a genuine accident, it's a genuine accident. Like there's no bad energy here. Same thing with this. There are times in your business, or with this next example, there are times in your business we just need to make money, and that's a fun thing, right? And you can pull up old things from the toolbox, old tricks that used to work. As long as you're having a good time, that's all that matters. If you're enjoying yourself, if you're excited, if the offer is good and you know that it's good and you're connected to it, even if it's not like the most exciting thing in the world that you could be selling right now for whatever reason, cool. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that energy of like, oh crap, I have to make money. I have to make money right now. What's something that's going to make money? And there's no connection to it. There's no excitement. There's no life force, heart, whatever you want to call it. It's purely this like transactional crap. Well, okay, we have to do something. This typically is not going to work very well for you. Trust me, I've done this many, many times. It's been a long time since I've done this because I've learned this lesson time and time again. If your heart isn't behind it, if it's not something you really believe in, if it's not something that, for whatever reason, maybe the price point isn't lighting you up, maybe the offer itself, the amount of support, what it is that you're talking about isn't lighting you up. An example for me of this is like back when I used to teach more social media type things, and I felt like that was the only thing that I could sell because that's what I was used to selling and what people knew me as. And I remember like going to update hashtag like a boss, which is like an old program of mine that I'm sure some of you will remember for sure. And I remember like having to update it and be like, well, at least it's something to sell, like I already did it. So I should probably update it. And the way you just heard me talk about it was like the energy through the whole process. It felt like I was dragging my feet through every single move that I had to make to update this offer and to resell it. Because if I'm going to update it, I might as well resell it, And it was very logical. It was very masculine, just like, okay, this makes sense to do, so we should do it. And shocker, it didn't work very well because that was my heart behind it. It just wasn't there. Another example that I've experienced in this is like the old way of launching and the old online business model that you still see sometimes, but I feel like it's evolved a lot. The old way is the way that I initially learned, which is like you create one or two offers, like big, robust, 12, 15, 20 module courses, right? These huge offers, you create a couple of them, and those are the only thing. You just sell them again and again and again all year long. That I was like, well, that's what everybody else is doing. That's what works. So I guess I should do it that way too. And it wasn't fun. It felt awful. It felt like every time I sat down to do any work, I felt so much resistance. That's another way to feel into this. is like, if you're feeling that resistance of like, I literally would rather be doing anything else on the planet than this thing right here. This is a red flag. There are other options. There are other things that you can put out into the world. So how I rectified this for myself, because I kind of had this like midlife crisis in my business, or quarter life crisis in my business a couple of years ago, because I had like put out this course again and I hated it and nothing was lighting me up. And I really had to come to grips with, okay, what I used to talk about is not what I want to talk about anymore. What I used to teach on, what I used to create, it's not that it doesn't serve a purpose. It's not that it's not useful. It's just not what I want to do anymore. So then we had to figure out, okay, what do I want to do now? And the answer at the time was like, okay, what am I genuinely doing that's lighting me up? What am I genuinely doing that I'm nailing right now? Okay, so the second piece of this is like selling things that you haven't embodied, selling things that you haven't mastered yet, because you took a course and learned about it and you're like, ooh, I could talk about this. This is not the same thing as this is something that you yourself has mastered. So I had to ask myself, what am I genuinely nailing right now that's lighting me up? And that answer was things on energy and embodiment and like learning my human design and just creating the type of business that felt really good for me and tailoring it for myself and my lifestyle. Like, these are the things that I was actually doing behind the scenes that I hadn't started talking about. So I started talking about that more, and then slowly but surely started creating more courses around it. And because my heart was so behind it, because I was having so much fun, that is what led me to what now has been the peak of my business, which was last summer, because putting out the things that I genuinely was doing and wanted to talk about. So it all comes back to the heart. It all comes back to the energy that is behind what you're putting out into the world, whether it's an offer or a piece of content. If it's not there, you're likely not going to reciprocate much of anything other than that, right? You're going to probably get, if you're not putting a lot of energy out, you're not going to receive a lot back. So I would feel into that. And then let's talk a little bit more about this, the caveat to this of like selling things that you haven't embodied. This is really easy to do. And I think that this is why maybe the coaching industry can get a bad rep sometimes, because it's so easy to learn something or to be lit up by something that somebody else teaches or something that you've learned, and want to turn around and put out something similar in your own way, which is fine. Nothing is wrong with those things, except, again, you haven't mastered it yet, right? It's like you take a course on meditation and it changes your life. It motivates you. You start meditating and you're starting to work on it. It feels like it's working, but you haven't mastered it yet. So until you master it, then all of a sudden you put out a course on meditation and how to change your life with meditation. But it's like, okay, you just learned that from somebody else, right? So like, you're not quite walking your talk yet, and you're trying to monetize this thing that isn't fully embodied. So how can this be your signature process? How can you expect people to learn from you and ask you genuine questions across the spectrum of this subject when you haven't experienced the spectrum of the subject yet? You haven't lost in this realm and you haven't won in this realm. So, right, we need to be, I don't know if we need to like be fully masters of the thing before we sell it, but certainly at a point where you've had good experience is what I'm trying to say. So I think the reason why this doesn't work and this can be a money blocker is because people can feel that it all comes back to energy, every single one of these things. Shocker. It all comes back to energy. So if you're putting out something that, you're not walking your talk yet, people can either see that outright, right? It'd be like you putting out, let's see, what would be a good example of this? It'd be like you putting out a course on how to make consistent 10K months when you're not making any money at all, right? Because you took a course on how to do it, or a way of doing it, but you've never done it yourself, or maybe you've done it once, but whatever. Like, there's a reason why I haven't created a program that's like how to make consistent 6-figure months. I've made it one time, but if I knew how to do that consistently, I'd be doing it consistently. So until I figure out that piece, I'm not going to create a program on it. That's what I'm talking about. So people that know you, that have been following you for a certain period of time, will know, right? They'll be like, wait, you haven't done that. So why would I buy this thing from you, or, trust you for this thing? And even if they don't, your energy doesn't lie, right? And even worse, if somebody does trust you and does buy into it, that could like seriously hurt your brand, which is a future money blocker, obviously. You're hurting your brand and your reputation at that point. So we just don't want to do that. We're in a day and age and period in business where you can monetize anything. You can create an incredible offer out of anything. This is what I help women do. There's nothing off the table. So there's no reason why you need to be putting out things just because it's worked in the past and it's proven, or that you haven't quite mastered yet. There's plenty of other options that you can get excited about that will work now. And you might be wondering, okay, well, the only thing I know how to do, or the only thing that I've mastered, are the things that I don't want to talk about anymore. Okay, then how can we teach them? How can we offer them in a way that's actually fun for you? So back when I just knew social media and that's all that I had to offer, So there wasn't much else that I could create, at least that I was aware of at the time, or that I wanted to. So what I did was I just switched up the way that I offered it. Instead of doing traditional courses, because that was the only thing that I knew how to do, or that I realized that you could do, that's when I started having fun with my containers, right? I started doing different types of masterminds and microminds and intensives and one-on-ones. And I started like just getting more creative with the containers themselves, and just the focus and the branding of the offer. And that made things so much more fun. And then over time, I learned how to grow my own business and was able to then expand the offers that I put out into the world. Okay, so that's the second thing. The third thing that could possibly be blocking your money flow is burning yourself out. Unless you're having a good time. That's what I put burning yourself out, ... unless you're having a good time. There are the people out there, and there are seasons where it's just hustle mode. It is what it is. We've all experienced it, where it feels good just to burn the candle on both ends. It's just the time of life. And you're having a good time, even if there's periods that you're exhausted. You still wouldn't want to be anywhere else. When I say burning yourself out, I mean, that you're being overworked. You're doing things that you don't want to do, or selling things that you don't want to sell, or working with the type of people that you don't want to work with at the rate that you don't want to work with them. And you're not giving yourself a balance of reprieve. right? There's a huge imbalance, a massive imbalance of work versus play or work versus rest. So the reason why this is a money blocker is because typically if you're not feeling good and you're not having a good time, like this isn't just a season, this is, or maybe it is a season, but it's a season that you don't want to be in and you're not having a good time. Usually the reason why you continue to do this to yourself is because it's rooted in a reason of scarcity. Maybe the money isn't flowing, or the clients aren't flowing, or things aren't happening in your business, or whatever it is that we're talking about, in the way that you want it to. So your solution is to do more. Okay, I need more money, so I need to do more things. I need more clients, so I need to do more work. I need more traffic or more engagement, so I need to put in more hours. This is all rooted in scarcity, in that old, outdated paradigm of like, you got to work hard, you got to put in the hours, you got to put in the sweat equity, blood, sweat, and tears. Again, sometimes there are seasons for this, but if that is your way of thinking constantly, this thing of like, okay, if I stop, if I slow down, if I take a day for myself, if I'm sick and I take a day off, then things are going to stop. We see this is very outdated, and it's just not true. Like, not even close to true. So this is going to stop your money flow, because this is a mismatch of money, of the flow of money. The belief behind to earn more, I got to do more, is because if you slow down, there's not enough, or there's not, if you stop, then it's going to stop, right? Or like it's this lack mentality that there's not enough money out there. There's not enough clients out there. You got to go, right? You see like, and that's the way to check into it, right? Like, okay, let's do an example. Let's say you're sick. Okay. You come down with a cold, and what you need to do is take the day off and binge Netflix, or take a nap, or go to the doctor and just take it easy, right? You need to take a day off. But instead of doing those things and doing what you need to do for yourself, you decide to work, or sit at a desk, or, do some busy work, because that's you showing up in your business and doing things that you think you should be doing. Why? Like, look into the reason of why. Well, okay, why are you doing those things? Because if I don't, then I could miss the sale. Then I'm going to ruin my consistency, or I'm going to stop what's already being stopped. Like, it's all rooted in that lack and scarcity. So that obviously is the opposite of money and abundance, is scarcity. So that's the energy you're putting out. That's the energy you're going to get back. So a way that I've flipped this for myself, that always allows me to check in with myself in moments like this, because I'm a manifesting generator. My default is to work. That's what I'm here to do, is to work and to create. And I'm happiest in a lot of cases when working. I'm working on that. But the way that I check in for this for myself, because this can be very confusing because of those things, is I'll ask myself, like, if I had $1 million in the bank, like, let's say that the business is exactly where I wanted it to be. It's a multi-7-figure business. I had all the clients and in the ways that I wanted to have them, and the way that I wanted to support them. Everything is exactly what I want it to be. What would I do in this case? Would I take a day off, or would I work? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is, of course, you would take a day off, because you taking a day off is for the highest good of you. Right? That's right there is a match for money, not pushing yourself to the limits out of fear that if you don't, then you're going to miss something. So that is a way that I recommend checking in. It's like, what would you do? Another way to think about this too is if you're spiritual, you can think of this like the highest good for you and the highest good for all. If you are constantly burning yourself out and running yourself ragged, that's not for the highest good of you, right? Because all you're going to do, like it will get to a point where you do have to stop because you get sick or you self-sabotage or whatever the case may be. And if you have to stop out of illness or you make yourself sick or you have to quit your business or disappear for a while because you've burnt yourself out so much, that's not the highest good for you. And it's not the highest good for all, because people need your magic in the world. They need your business. There's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. If you're doing the thing that lights you up and that you genuinely are excited to do. So I want you to think of it this way. Let's say you're in this habit of burning yourself out, working too much, right? Let's say you've created this really negative cycle with yourself. And then let's say all of a sudden the sales start flowing, right? You're running yourself into the ground and all of a sudden you start having 10K, 20K, 30K weeks, days, whatever, 7-figure business. Like something just clicks and it works. What is this doing? It's reaffirming this belief that for you to be successful, you have to be unhealthy. You have to treat yourself poorly and override your intuition and, anything in your body just to work in order for it to work. So if you get successful being unkind to yourself and that reaffirms that for you, it's only a matter of time before, again, you make yourself sick. Or, no matter how much money you're making, it gets to the point where you have to take some time off. Or, you see that happen a lot where a lot of people do this. They reach a level of success, but they're so totally exhausted or ill or whatever because of because of the lack of balance or whatever. It's just not sustainable. So they end up disappearing. So the way that I think about this is, I believe in God, I believe in source. So I know and if I'm doing something in a way that's not sustainable, I'm probably going to block my success, because until I find a way that's sustainable, it's not for my highest good or the highest good of all for me to experience that success. I've got to find a way that's sustainable. And this is especially true, I believe, for those of us that mentor and coach other people. Because if I all of a sudden get wildly successful and I don't take days off, I'm not present with my kids, I'm not having a good time, I'm miserable. And then my clients come to me and they say, hey, how did you achieve all of that you just achieved? And then I have to turn around and tell them, just compromise all of your values. Don't pay attention to your kids. Don't travel. Don't have a good time. If you're sick, work anyway, right? Like that would be perpetuating a really big problem. Something that I know is not the way that we're meant to live. So that's another way that I check in with this too, with my own self. And I think that could be a really good tool for yourself, and a way to check in of like, okay, is how I'm showing up right now, how I'm living, how I'm working, whatever it is that you're looking at, is this for my highest good and or for the highest good of all? I really think when you can find that quote balance or that harmony for yourself, and you can get into a groove and have a good time. And again, this is going to look different for everybody. This is why I don't love sharing. I'll talk about it at any time, but I don't necessarily believe in sharing or copying people's routines or seeing, okay, this person's successful, this is how she runs her life, so I need to do that too. That's not the path to success. Everybody's path to success is going to look different because everybody has different values, different lives, different everything. So it needs to be personalized for you, and you need to go inward and trust yourself on what that actually looks like. So burning yourself out unless you're having a good time is absolutely a money blocker, because it is the opposite of abundance. It's rooted in lack. Okay, the fourth thing that I thought of when thinking of these money blockers is overthinking your creations, work, actions, or overriding your intuition. I fully believe that, and this takes some practice, but I fully believe that we all know the answers for ourselves. We all have the solution in us. We get signs and signals and hits all day long on the direction we should go, on the answers that we should seek, everything. Especially as women, our intuition is so strong, but oftentimes we override it with looking to other people, or in this case, what we're talking about for this example, overthinking, right? We're trying to rationalize and reason with something that's not meant to be reasoned with, which is our intuition. It's just a knowing. I see a lot of people doing this with their work, with their content, with their offers. And this is something I used to be majorly guilty of myself, and I still catch myself doing this often, actually, which is overthinking the things that we put out into the world. You might get an idea for a program or an offer or a video or a podcast, whatever your thing is, you might get this idea and you get excited about it. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And then it's like, okay, but how do I fit it, to where it's going to work with the algorithm? Or how do I work it to where I can make the absolute most money? Or how do I, make it look like this other person's thing? It's where we take this idea and then we say, okay, but how do we then do this? And when you do that again and again and again and again for the same idea, over time, you don't have the same idea anymore. This thing is completely different. And I this is just my personal belief, that we get these downloads and these ideas straight from source, but then the way that I word this is like we kill the magic. We take the magic away by overthinking it. And I think, I see a lot of people do this, and I've worked with plenty of women over the years where they will come to me with such an incredible idea. And I'm like, great, put it out, go put it out into the world. And then, days later, weeks later, they're still trying to quote, perfect it and mess with and alter the original idea, trying to make it more consumable, or again, all the things that we already talked about. So this is a money blocker because, again, I truly believe we get these ideas for a reason. And if you can just try not to alter them so much and have a level of surrender and trust, this is where that magical energy and virality can come in. This is where people make insane amount of sales from like a $20 offer, because that's the number that came with the idea. This is a money blocker because overthinking something that's not meant to be overthought or thought about too much. I don't know how to say it. Today is one of those days, I don't know if you can tell, I'm just going to own it, where I feel like my words are just not flowing. I think we just pause. We just went on a trip this past weekend as a family. We had the best time, but I ate so bad. I had so much junk. I was just living my best life, and I was eating all of the pizza, all of the sweets, drinking, just having a jolly old good time. And I'm feeling a little fuzzy today. So I apologize if this feels a little clunky. Just bear with me. We're going to get through it. The intention's good. It just may not be the most succinct and eloquent, but we're going to be okay. But anyway, I think you get what I'm saying about this one. If you overthink it, it's going to take away the magic. And if you do that enough, you're going to be blocking your money. One, because you're probably never putting things out. If you're overthinking everything, it's going to be exhausting to you. And it's just going to have this negative ripple effect that is not conducive of attracting in the money that we can and we are worthy and capable of attracting. Okay, we got through it. Okay, so the fifth thing that I put on this list is chasing and obsessing over sales. This is a biggie also because it is rooted in lack, right? This looks like putting out something or selling something and then like constantly refreshing your phone to see if people are reading your messages or looking at your stories, constantly looking at your story views and seeing if that person saw it, or, chasing people. Now, in some cases, and everybody has a different business model here. Okay. So just because I don't cold message and I will follow up with people for sure. But just because I don't do something doesn't mean that if you do it, it's wrong. Everybody has a different way of doing business. If it feels good for you, again, all of this is rooted in energy and your intention and what feels good, and like that base belief and energy behind the action. So if you're following up or messaging people to let them know about an offer because you know that they're interested in it and because you believe so much in this offer and you're so excited to put out into the world, and you just love, like you love inviting people personally, like this is your way of doing business, great. By all means, do you. But if you're messaging people or cold messaging or following up repeatedly because you're afraid that they'll miss it or they'll forget, or that if you don't do that, then you're not going to get any sales, or that's the only way to get sales. And if you don't do it, the sales are going to stop, right? The energy of that is a lot different. So when I say chasing or obsessing with sales, I mean like the base belief of that is if I don't do this, then there won't be enough, or there won't be any, or this is the only path for me for success is I have to control. I have to make sure, I have to take this, myself and take control of it and physically go out to each person and walk them through and hold their hand through this process, rather than giving people the credit that they're all adults and can read a sales page and make that decision on their own. Another thing to consider too with this is the type of client that you want to attract into your world, the type of client or customer that you want to come into your world. So for me, when I think of any of my offers, whether it be a masterclass or a high-level mastermind or a private client, I want women in my world who can make their own decisions, who are confident, they take initiative, right? Like I'm not looking in any case for any kind of client who is looking for somebody to hold their hand or baby them or constantly reassure them, or who wants to overstep boundaries or anything like that. Like that's the opposite of who I'm calling in. So for me to attract in the confident, self-starting women that I'm wanting to work with, I need to first be that myself. I need to be like that in the containers that I'm in my world. I need to be the type of person that if I have a question to something and I'm looking for an answer, I don't automatically go and look to somebody else. I first try and figure it out myself. And then if I'm stuck, then, that there's a big difference. So when you want to consider that, and this is the biggest reason why I don't cold message, other than I don't love that tactic. This is a big reason why I don't quote chase people in my world, because I don't need to be chased. I don't want to attract in people that I have to, what I feel like, beg or coerce into working with me, because I don't need that for myself. I follow the people that I want to follow. And when they put out something that makes sense for me in the stage of life or business that I'm in, I'm fully capable of clicking on a link, paying attention to when, cart's going to close or whatever, and signing up for the thing or asking questions if I have questions to ask, and paying attention to their stories to make sure that I know when the last call is or the last day of enrollment. Like, I can handle that. And I want people in my world that can also do the same. I'm not trying to baby anybody, and I don't need to be babied. So if you feel like you need to constantly baby or whatever, then do you need that in your world? And also be careful, because if you're putting out that energy, you're probably going to get that back. But to me, this is a big money blocker, because it's rooted in that scarcity again, unless it's, it just makes sense for your business and you're per usual having a good time. Very, very different, those two things. Okay. And then the last thing here, when I think about money blockers that you're probably overlooking, is getting stuck in the not enough phase of your business versus gratitude for what it is. So, golly, I've been talking for 50 minutes. I just realized how long this episode is. Okay, this is the last one. This is where you're making some sort of money and it doesn't match your bigger goal. Thus, you're constantly in this state of not enough. You're constantly or consistently feeling bad about what's coming through in the bank, and in sales. And it's constantly like, it's not enough, versus like, okay, amazing. Being grateful for the money that is flowing in versus what's not flowing in, or hyper fixating on what's not flowing in. So I've told this story before, but a couple of years ago in 2021, I was in this phase of my business where I was making pretty consistent 20K months, sometimes 30, but I felt like I was kind of stuck there a little bit. Like I could not get 50K months. And I certainly obviously couldn't make it past that. And that was my big goal, was to make it to like 80K, 6-figure months. That's, whose goal isn't that? So anyway, I was making these consistent 20K months, and every single month I was like, oh gosh, I'm stuck. This isn't enough. Why can't I make more? What's happening? What's my block? What am I doing wrong? Right? I was hyper fixating on the not enough versus what was there. When in reality, my bills were paid, things were awesome. It just wasn't quite at the level that I was wanting it to be, that I was working toward. But instead of putting that in perspective in a positive way, I was just, again, like focused on what wasn't working and what it wasn't. So there was no gratitude, or very, very little gratitude, for the money that was flowing into my world. And I truly believe, looking back, that this was keeping me stuck, because when I had this awareness and I realized what I was doing, it was a very profound moment for me. And I nipped it in the bud fast. And what that looked like was I had the awareness of what I was doing. And then I just put into practice as often as I could gratitude and celebration for what I had built and what I'm building, what I'm calling in, and the clients in my world and the people that were there, no matter whether it was one client or 100, it didn't matter. Like it just re-centering myself in feelings of gratitude for what was there, no matter what that looked like. And I'm telling you, I didn't have to do that for a month before I hit 50K months. And I've very few times made under 50K since that moment because of that. Like, this is so huge. Truly, we could sum up all of these things. I mean, probably the biggest money blocker for everybody is a lack of gratitude for what's currently there. And 9 times out of 10, if I'm ever working with somebody and they're having some sort of issue with their sales or their money, it is because they've gotten in a negative pattern around it. They're looking at it constantly through the lens of not enough. Again, rooted in scarcity and lack versus gratitude for the money that's there. Money is just money. Okay, so if it's $1 that's coming through and you're looking at it like it's not enough, and you're not grateful for it, and you're basically just saying like, I don't want this. That's what you're saying. So that will block you. So quick way to turn around your money flow, if it does feel slower or blocked, is to check in with your gratitude, put some gratitude practices in place. Something that I was doing last year that I've stopped doing, that I'm going to start doing again, is I would journal every single morning. And in my gratitude list, because the way that I journal is I start with a list of gratitude, just to like get the feelings flowing. And then I'll actually like journal whatever I need to journal out. Whether that be like what I'm calling in for the day or what I'm working on internally. And in my gratitude, I would always say, thank you for whatever amount of sales that I made the day prior. So I was like constantly, and anytime like a sale would come through, whether it's $2,000 sale or $20 sale, I would like pause and look at it and like feel the feeling of like, money is flowing. Because if it's flowing in one way, like it can multiply, but only if you are greeting it with that feeling of gratitude. If you're not pushing it away and blocking it with feelings of lack and scarcity. Okay. So those are what I believe are some of the top and, most sneaky money blockers that we have all done in one way or another. If you found this helpful, please let me know. I would love if you share this out in your stories. By the way, we have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us on YouTube and you can watch this. You can watch the video and featured videos. But yeah, if this was helpful, let me know. And we've started putting out 2 episodes a week now. So if we have an interview to air, we will air those on Thursdays. We'll do solo episodes on Monday and interviews on Thursdays. So if we have an interview this week, which I believe we do, then I will see you here on Thursday. Otherwise, I will catch you here next week. Bye.